Hi friends, David here from Learn Stage Lighting, and today we're going to take a look at ENTTEC's EMU software. Now, before we get started, a little bit of history, a little bit of, who's this good for? So, for those of you who are familiar historically, ENTTEC had a piece of software called DMXs, and it was very, very popular and very good for gigging musicians, for small churches, for people with basic lighting setups, especially if you and your setup, the way that you worked, lent itself to being able to just program a bunch of songs, reorder them for that night's set, and then play through them either with a foot pedal or as a VST program in an audio DAW, okay? A VST plugin in an audio DAW, if I could talk, okay? And then a few years back, for various reasons, they decided to kill off DMXs and rebuild it from the ground up. There were a couple things going on, including the fact that the windows didn't scale well to higher resolution screens, because at that point it had become a pretty old piece of software as far as software goes. So they rebuilt it as EMU, and for a while, it was pretty touch and go, where we were looking at other options to recommend to people. It's not always our top pick for people, but it's come a long way, and it's now to the point where it's really usable and really fits that void of, I want to run my lights from stage, and I want a simple show. I want it easy to learn. Maybe I want to use a PC, maybe I want to use a Mac, and I either want to run it from that foot switch, a MIDI foot switch in this case, or I want to go ahead and run it as a VST plugin inside of a digital audio workstation. It's not a perfect software yet. I know some Mac users have mentioned they have issues, but I know I was working with one personally recently. They reached out to EMU and figured out a quick patch. They patched it. Everything was fine. So the team's been responsive. They've been good. And the software's at a place now where I can recommend it. And the full caveat here is, here at Learn Stage Lighting Gear, we are ENTTEC dealers, okay? And so if you need hardware from ENTTEC to use EMU, you can get it through us. We would love to have you as a customer, but the software itself, we actually can't sell. They don't offer it to their dealers. And in fact, I pay for this software myself too. To get started with EMU, basically, it's a subscription-based software. Now, of course, I had the web page up, EMU, on ENTTEC. You go search it, and you end up on this page right here, okay? And you can scroll down here, and basically, you can either buy it outright and use it with a USB to DMX adapter or a ArtNet device. So you can just straight up buy it monthly or yearly. Or you scroll down here, and if you buy from any ENTTEC dealer, any of these boxes, the USB Pro series, the ODE series, or if you have an old DMXs box around, you get this much time free as a trial for EMU when you buy that product. And we've got them, we'll link below. Usually we recommend the USB Pro. It's the cheapest and just generally works really well for people. Easy. Okay, so that's what you need to get going. Now, there is a free version of EMU. You'll see a chart on that web page I was just at. It's pretty limited. It's really just for testing things out. There's not a lot of fixtures available, just some generic ones and the ENTTEC brand ones. But again, it's around $100 a year right now at the time of this recording. It's right in line with Lightkey, its main competitor, in our eyes, and it's it can be a good fit. So what I want to do today, as we always do here on Learn Stage Lighting, is stop jabbering, because I know people are going to comment, hey, you jabbered for too long. This is for you. And get in and show you how to start from scratch and build a basic show in EMU so that you can see and really understand, okay, could this be the right software for me? Is it the right one for me? Or maybe you'll see me program this and say, no, it's not. And that's why this is the first in a series covering every console we cover and how you can use it. Just a basic how-to. Here we go. Okay, so the first thing you do is you go to patch, okay? You want to patch your lights. Now, they've got a lot of manufacturers in here, and through their site, if you don't see your fixture, you can request it. They typically get them done in a week or two, okay? So in this case, I've got a rig ready to go here of Gamma LED Vision fixtures. So I have some Borealis RC. I'll look at my notes here. 14 channel mode. And I have 10 of these guys, and so there is a place they keep updating things, which means things change from time to time. Let's see, is there a place that I can add 10 of them? I don't think so. I think I just drag them in one at a time. 1, 2. So pretty simple. Just drag and drop on the DMX address you want. 6, 7, 8. 9, 10, and then you can star it, of course, too. That's going to put it right here, and so you can get to it quick. Like I have the Starburst par, which I'll patch in a second, but for right now, I'm just going to back out of this, go to the TX5. Another fixture we like a lot from Gamma, just great for bands, DJs, even churches. What we like about it is let's see, 6 of these 3. What we like about it is it's really price competitive with a lot of the comparable fixtures. It has a wider zoom range than a lot of those fixtures, so it can kind of be a beam and a spot, which is really neat. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, one more. 6. And if I did this right, uh-oh, I did something wrong. Maybe I need one more. Nope. Okay, so the TX4 started at 141 for some reason. I guess there was a channel gap in there. Interesting. So I'm actually just going to take these all. So they're going to end at 248. And so you can see here, this is a great representation. I think I have an extra one in here. We're just going to mess this all up. So we're going to delete the fixture. So we're ending at 248. So we'll just drag all the existing ones. You see it's red if it's not going to work, if it's an overlap. So not bad. I wish, and I'm sure this is coming, to where you could just say, hey, I want to patch 10 of these. And so they start at 159. Nope, they start at 141. So I do need one more, which means I might just put them out of order, but we'll find out. And so, yeah, it looks like for some reason I've got a gap in there. Or did I count the Borealis wrong? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I did count the Borealis wrong. So that's where, again, you can just watch me be a hot mess just like you. Just kidding. I can duplicate that. Okay, and 1 pops in the next available address. Now we're ready to rock and roll. Then I want to do a Starburst par. And so I'm just going to press 1 there, and this duplicate is new here, and so I've got 8 of those. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. See, that's easier. You learn something new every day. Grab a drink of coffee and eat it. All right. So now they're patched. Take note of the DMX addresses. That's what you'll set all of the lights to. I do kind of wish there was a different way to look at this to kind of see all of your stuff. But regardless, it is handy that you can go in here and you can actually adjust some things in here as well. It looks like, yeah, you can start to build custom fixtures, which is pretty cool. That's new and I haven't explored it yet, but it's good to know. So we're just going to ignore that for now and click out a patch back to the home screen. So this is where you work with your fixtures. For example, if we select one of these Borealis RC, which is a fixture, it's a wash fixture, you'll see here I have faders for each color, and I also have a color picker. There also, if I click like a different channel, like thought it was in here, dimmer. Never mind that. But you can click the individual channels. If you shift click, you can get multiple. You get a range. If you control click, you get individual. If you right click on it and hit select same, you'll get all of the same type of channel on the same type of fixture, and you can start to work with them. Now, we'll notice here that our fixtures aren't coming on. We do need to bring in a strobe value. So we're just going to take that open, and then we are going to need a color. And then we need to set up our DMX output. So depending on if you're using a network-based ArtNet device or a regular USB device, it'll look a little bit different, but you're going to go to the settings menu here. And before you do all this, you'll need to have licensed your software. And so that is on the license page here. But we have ArtNet, which is what I'm going to turn on because we are working with a network-based visualizer here. And then I have a DMX USB Pro plugged in from ENTTEC, so I could turn that on as well, which I'm not going to use because, again, I don't need it right now. And we'll see here, oh yeah, I got all of my issues, all of my strobe channels are, there we go, not quite to full. And so we can see in the visualizer they light up, and we're ready to rock and roll. So programming in EMU, there's a couple great shortcuts. This is not going to be the definitive everything guide to EMU because it would get really long, but we cover this software in our courses over at Learn Stage Lighting Labs, and there's a link below. You can check that out. But basically, you move your channels around to make them do whatever it is you want. You go ahead and you can build groups of fixtures. So right now I just have the Borealis, for example. And so now I can make a group. And having a group makes it easier to select and deselect all of those fixtures at once, which can help you program. You go in there, boom, see we just selected them as a group. Now we can change all the colors, ready to roll, okay? You can see them there, or we can go ahead and, oh, here it is. So you've got like the intensity control over all of them. Really, I tend to, the old fader-based approach is how DMX has always worked, but using these graphical approaches often is a lot simpler and nicer coming to you in a more modern console. You make your fixtures do what you want. And then here in the Programs tab is basically how you organize a show. So banks are generally your songs or your type of like different maybe church services, like a regular service versus like a funeral versus like I know it's not fun for the second, versus like a youth event. You could have those as different banks. For a lot of musicians, it's individual songs, or if you're a church where you're programming different lighting for different songs, you would do this by song here. So I would create a new bank, for example, and give it a name. We'll just call it Song 1 here as a band. And then our first program, we're going to go ahead and we can call this, intro, right? And so then we would go ahead, I was over here in default, but now I'll go here to this intro. I can make the lights do things. So it's a lot like using a computer, create a new file, right? A little bit different than typical lighting consoles, but create a new file, make the lights do stuff, right? So I'll grab all my Borealis here, I'll turn them on, strobe it full, give them some color, move them, and I would get more precise with this if I were programming an actual show, of course. Then go ahead here. The Programs is also right here as a little spot, so we can save the show, and then we are good to create a new program. Now notice there's two options here. There's duplicate and new. So if I create new like that, I'm starting from scratch. More often than not, I like to duplicate because that gives me the starting point of where I came from, right? So that I don't, I make sure I get all my strobe channels on. It just saves you a lot of time. It's a good idea to do. And so then maybe we go to our next cue and we'll turn them a pretty sweet like cyan, okay? And obviously, as you see in the visualizer, this isn't really a real show. It's just a good example. Let's talk about effects while we're here. So the effects work in two ways. First, there is the oscillator. Second, there is the sound tracker. Both are great. The oscillator is a simple effects generator like a lot of lighting consoles have, okay, where you would select channels. So let's just go and select our dimmer channels, okay? Then I would turn it on. Sine, square, triangle, and the ramps are different shapes that it can follow. Okay. As you get it going, notice it's very musical, so it always works off of anything in the oscillator, always works off of the tempo. So there is a master speed right here. Now, if you set this up to sync tempo with a DAW, with any sort of audio program that sends out a MIDI tempo, you can have this speed, this BPM, change based off of what you've set for that song in your DAW. Okay, and so then this is just music notes. So say we do something slow, so we set it for 4 bars. Then I'm going to adjust the chase. That's the offset, basically, of the effect. The shape is a little bit less noticeable. It's more of a, hey, how does this sine wave shape actually look? So a sine wave is a shape that's like, this. You probably can see that where it goes up, it comes down, it's nice and soft. The shape kind of skews that wave a little bit. Then phase is basically like, if I had to describe it, it's like, as you see here as I move it, it's like the time of the whole effect. So it's not the offset of individual fixtures, but it's more like if you copied an effect from one attribute to another and you just wanted to offset it in time that you could use. I honestly don't use phase that much. And then amount is the size. So right now it's at full. So that dimmer channel goes from full to 0. Okay. But if I bring that down real low, you see it just sits around the middle of the values, and it's a much more subtle effect. Again, in lighting, there's times to be wild, right? There's times to use the full amount, but there's a lot of times where something more subtle makes a lot of sense, okay? So go ahead, I always want to go and save a lot. It'll show up blue like that when there's stuff to save. Okay, so you see here, we've got intro, we've got this blank one, and then we've got intro 1, so I would go to my programs here, and then I'd call this verse 1, okay? This new program 1, I'm just going to go ahead and delete. And so now, as you can see, we've got the basis, we've got the basis of a song here, where we've got a couple cues, we can go between them, we can set a fade time right here, okay? So that's for all of that's a second based fade for all of the programs in the bank. Okay, you can see many things fade well. Effects don't always fade well, or actually, I apologize. So it is, even though you mouse over and it says it's for all programs in the bank, it's actually the fade in time for the given cue. Okay, so now we see, both of them fade nicely. Isn't it nice? So you can set that fade time there. Auto run is literally just to make it like a chase where it's just going to bounce through the cues and even loop. I don't use that much. That's just a personal preference. And then that's about it. So the other things you need to know is when you're working with the programs, really the only thing I really go to the programs page for is to name them as I'm building them. If you're updating them for specific venues, etc., you really don't have to go to this page much, okay? Also, reordering your songs here, literally just drag and drop. You see that? And they move, or your programs for your given show. When you're actually working with your lights, you're going to spend the majority of your time here in the home screen. Okay, a couple other things to be aware of is you can lock channels. So that's like a park where if you just want something to stay on and not really be a part of the programming, you can do that. You can also invert channels, flip them upside down, which can help depending on how your particular fixture works. And then there is, as I mentioned, the sound tracker. The sound tracker is pretty awesome. So what you do is basically grab some channels here. So let's just grab the tilt for something fun. Okay, and then you start to bring in a level. Now, why is nothing happening? Okay, well, nothing's happening. These aren't moving because I haven't set up my audio. And so that's the first thing you want to do is go here to settings, to audio. Hopefully this will be happy with me using the same audio I'm using for the camera. Yeah, it is. Okay, and you see here, as I talk, as I move my voice, there's the different bands here. So there's main, sub, low, mid, high. You can change that frequency range of each frequency as desired. You can also change the sensitivity, which is pretty cool, of those. So what I recommend for this is really dialing in for your sound. Put it on a mix or an aux send of your mixer. If you have that ability, like if it's a band. If it's a DJ, you probably just got tracks left, right, send it in. But if you have that ability, send it on a mix. And so then you can go ahead and have, just like kick drum, snare drum, lead guitar maybe, or maybe you change it with scenes during your show to accentuate different musicians at different points of the show. The biggest thing is that the lighting, as you can see, can follow the music perfectly, better than someone operating the lights could, because it's working off sound activation, and that's cool and powerful stuff. So you see here we have the level. That's basically the amount that it raises the fader, and then the attack and release is like an audio compressor, where you go, well, that got really high really fast. So the release is, feel like they need to adjust that scale a little bit. So the release is in milliseconds, and you can see as I talk, that really starts to smooth it out to make it a little bit less wild, a little bit less, syncopated, right? And so that's also pretty key as well, okay? And so that is how you adjust the sound tracker. The sound tracker definitely looks a lot better with real music than it does with just me talking. I just paused and restarted my recording quick, and I lost it. I think it's because I'm using it in two places. But there it goes again. But anywho, still, like when you've got it going to a beat of a drum or a guitar or a bass movement, it can look really awesome and create a interesting and sound activated look to your show without just being a light that's in sound active mode, which doesn't typically look all that good. So those are the basics of EMU. That's really all you got to do to get going is, switch around, go between all of these different presets, adjust different lights as you can, and then you're off to the races. The best thing about it is it does free you up to be creative as you go, and then you can operate it from a foot switch or again through the VST plugin, which I'm not really covering here just because that's not really our cup of tea, but it's not terribly difficult. You basically can bring up individual channels or bring up the different banks and programs over MIDI through the VST plugin. Okay, there's a pretty good amount of that in their manual. Now, to program a MIDI foot pedal, that's something you might be interested in. It's really just as simple as pressing MIDI learn right here. Okay, so we press that. We get this nice MIDI mappings now, which helps a ton because it was a little confusing before. And then for the most part, with most people running foot switches, I would just do programs forward and backwards and banks forward and backwards. If you don't have 4 buttons, you can just do banks, okay? And I believe, we'll double check in a minute, but you press the button, see it's highlighted, then you press a MIDI note. I don't have anything plugged in right now, and then you're good to go, okay? Again, programs and banks is preferred, but if you're here, say you're here just in the regular program, and you go just banks, then it will go through all of the programs, okay? So you don't necessarily have to program a back and forth on the programs, just the banks. But if you do have one for the programs, woohoo, you'll be good to go, okay? And so other things to be aware of, I think that's pretty much it. You have different shows in here, so that's key, is you can create, duplicate, and import and export shows between different computers, which is great. And other than that, I think that's pretty much it. So if you like this, if you check this out and you're like, okay, EMU looks like a good fit for me, then hey, we're your friends here at LearnStageLighting.com. We have a full gear site for folks in the US, and we would love to help you get your hands on a ENTTEC DMX USB Pro or another compatible interface in order to get started with EMU. You can check those out on our site, and of course, we'll link to it below. Thanks so much for watching, for subscribing if you're new here, and we'll see you guys in our next video. Thanks.